All right, so to the demise of many out there, Alabama is going to be dangerous this year. And I know there's a lot of people out there preying on their downfall, but for that population, this is going to be a rough year. Let me illustrate. I want to juxtapose last season to this upcoming season here. And so think about last season and the build up to it. Of course, it was Kalen DeBoer's first year as head coach for Alabama. He's filling the shoes of a legend, so not only are there expectations associated with that, but your every move is under a microscope and being criticized and ostracized and picked apart every day by members of the college football media, by people in the state of Alabama, Alabama fans, Tuscaloosa residents, Bama students, the fan base, donors, everybody is picking your every move apart and comparing you to Saban. Oh, well, Saban did it this way. Why are you changing things and doing it this way in your first year? That's always going to be a conversation. It's always going to be a narrative and something that Kalen DeBoer had to live with last year because naturally he wants to bring his own regime, his own vision, his own way of doing things in Tuscaloosa. He needs time and space to do that. But when you're taking over for a legend, you're always going to be compared to a legend. And it's just something that can pose a challenge when you're trying to build something. There's also that 30-day window after Saban retired that Alabama players could hop in the transfer portal, see what opportunities are out there. Some went to different teams. Some tested to see what opportunities are out there, ended up staying, and others didn't even bother jumping in. But Alabama naturally lost a few really productive playmakers to that transfer portal last year. Isaiah Bond and Caleb Downs being two of those guys, among others. And so that broke the team apart that was together in 2023, that won an SEC championship and went to the Rose Bowl. Now, a lot of those guys didn't stay together because that transfer portal window opened up. And so then DeBoer is bringing guys in from Washington. There's other guys joining the team. You've got freshmen. And it's just this weird concoction of guys who haven't really played together a lot. And it can be challenging to build team chemistry when that situation, we don't have a lot of continuity. I mean, there was a lot of mystery. There's a lot of guessing that went into Alabama's season last year. How's this guy going to work out? How are these two going to pair together? There are a lot of question marks, a lot of ambiguity. Ambiguity in championships don't really align. You also have to take into consideration the disparity between Kalen DeBoer's vision for what he wants his offense to look like and Jalen Milroe's strengths and capabilities as a quarterback. Historically, offenses that operate under Kalen DeBoer are pass-heavy. They're very aerial-style offenses, and there's a huge emphasis on the quarterback's ability to be a pocket passer. Jalen Milroe is kind of the antithesis to all those things. He thrives in offenses that place an emphasis on the run game, run-first, ground-and-pound offenses. Jalen Milroe thrives in. You saw that as he got more and more comfortable in that system in 2023. And he started off confident in 2024, but as you saw him try to mesh with the offensive style on Alabama last year, you saw him start to lose confidence because that's not exactly what his playing style is. Milroe is great when the play breaks down. He's great using his legs. He has a great deep ball. His intermediate passing game isn't great, but he thrives in offenses that run the ball first, and that can capitalize off of his ability to ad-lib and do things on the fly. That's not exactly what these Kalen DeBoer offenses look like. You need a pocket passer, a couple really skilled receivers, and the ability to pass the ball a lot. That offense and Jalen Milroe just did not mesh last year. It's a great offensive system, and Jalen Milroe was a great quarterback. They just didn't blend, and that was counterproductive to Alabama last year. As you turn the page and look at this upcoming season, 2025, circumstances look a lot different. There's continuity in Tuscaloosa. It's Kalen DeBoer's second year. So you know what to expect. Whenever a head coach is going into his first year with a new program, especially when you're replacing a legend like Nick Saban, There's going to be drama. There's going to be chatter. You're being asked the same questions all the time. There's a microscope on you. Of course, there's a lot of pressure on Kalen DeBoer this year because he has to prove himself at Alabama in the SEC. Winning 9 games is just simply not good enough for the Alabama standards. So there is a lot of pressure on DeBoer this year. But there's continuity. You know what to expect. And there's a certain comfort rooted in that. It's not the first time for everything. When it's the first time for everything, there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of anxiety. When there's familiarity, and you've done this before, you're a bit more comfortable. And I think you're starting to see that from this Alabama staff. It's also worth mentioning that 0, yes, I said it, 0 Alabama players even jumped in the transfer portal during the spring window. The guys that are there are staying. They're bought into Alabama. They're bought into Kalen DeBoer's vision, and that speaks miles. Kalen DeBoer will also be working with a pocket passer in Ty Simpson this year. And I think that Ty Simpson's style is going to mesh with what DeBoer wants to do on offense. And you're naturally going to see it just thrive more this year. And Alabama got the offensive coordinator that it always wanted. And Ryan Grubb. Yes, they made it work with Sheridan last year, but they always wanted Ryan Grubb. He was initially going to be DeBoer's OC in Alabama, but that fell through as Grubb went to Seattle. But now he has returned to Alabama, and so the guy that DeBoer wanted all along is now his OC. DeBoer is starting to intentionally sculpt and craft this team the way that he wants it to be. And you saw this transition take place a little bit with Duke when John Shire took over for Coach K. John Shire inherited Coach K's team. And in a way, that's what Kalen DeBoer did last year. There were some of his pieces on there. There was some of Saban's pieces on there. And it was a weird mix. But as this team starts to transition and evolve, it'll start to become more and more DeBoer's team. And you saw that with Duke in its first year with John Shire. Yes, they performed well, but it was below the Duke standard. They took a step up the year after. And then the year after that, they're in the Final Four. And so, and this is truly John Shire's team. Like, they embody his identity as a head coach. He picked these guys out. Obviously, does Duke have an influence on that? Yes. But Alabama is going to have an influence on how this team is going to continue to grow over these next couple of years. The brand is there. Just like the brand is there with Duke, the brand is there for Alabama. And you bet your sweet bippy, Kalen DeBoer is going to use that as leverage. He's going to use that to his advantage. So, everything's not as shiny and new this year, and you don't have that drama associated with it. If you go back and look at all of Alabama's most successful years, it's when the eyes aren't really on them and their backs up against the wall. Look at 2015, coming off of the Sugar Bowl loss to Ohio State. People were picking Auburn. People were picking LSU, Tennessee to win the SEC. Not Alabama. Alabama was being very much overlooked in 2015. Well, they took note of that. And that was their motivation. And that was a team with a lot of grits. Jake Coker as their quarterback. And they put an incredible run together. And they won the Natty in 2015, which is incredible. You saw it with 2023 as well with Alabama. Everybody was expecting them to take a step back after they lost Bryce Young, after they lost Will Anderson. Well, that team may have overperformed a little bit, but they most certainly did not take a step back. As they went to Atlanta, they beat Georgia in the SEC Championship, and they went to the Rose Bowl. They lost to Michigan, of course, but they were in the Rose Bowl in a year where nobody expected them to be there. And the same goes for 2021. Coming off of that record-shattering 2020 performance Alabama had, they were expected to take a step back. They were in the Natty against Georgia that year. Expectations were through the roof in 2018. They were through the roof in 2022. And what happened those years? Alabama got destroyed by Clemson in the Natty in 2018. And in 2022, Alabama lost to Tennessee, and they lost to LSU, and they missed the playoff. Expectations were up here. And I don't care who your head coach is. Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Will Muschamp, Steve Sarkisian. I don't care who your head coach is. When you're going into a season with a magnifying glass on you like that, and expectations are up there, it's tough to manage and keep all those distractions out. And that was the case last year. Because like in 2022 and 2018, all the eyeballs are on Alabama and what they're going to do. And it's tough to navigate with that. But this is a year, in 2025, where people are expecting Alabama to take a step back. And that what happened last year is going to continue to translate into this year. And all of the shininess, the newness of Kalen DeBoer being the head coach at Alabama is now gone. It's year 2. There's not much of a talking point. And so that same magnifying glass that was on Alabama last year won't be on them as hard this year. That makes it easier for Alabama to focus on football operations. You're spending less time trying to block out the noise and more time trying to cultivate the team that you have and have it congenialize the right way so that it can maximize its potential in the regular season and in the playoff. That's the situation Alabama is going into this year. Less distraction, more certainty. And so I talk about the combination of circumstances and talent, the guys you got. Alabama's got some dogs coming back. Of course, you got that tandem of Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard returning. Alabama added Miami wide receiver Isaiah Horton through the portal. So Alabama's wide receiving core looks incredible for Ty Simpson this year. Yes, this will be his first full year starting, assuming Ty Simpson gets that job, which is what it looks like. But I think that he'll thrive with that receiving core. Alabama's running back room is incredibly deep. I think both lines get better for Alabama. But my only concern with Alabama's defensive line, you got some dogs on there. You got LT Overton, Tim Keenan still there, James Smith still there. But there's not a lot of depth. So if one of those guys or two of those guys go down, that could spell trouble for Alabama as the season goes on. But you've got continuity in the cornerback room. This Alabama team looks really promising this year. The blue chip ratios haven't come out yet. I would have used that data to supplement this video. But I can almost guarantee you this Alabama team is going to be in the top 5 as far as blue chip goes for programs across the nation. This team looks scary. This team looks dangerous. Because, and I'm going to end on this, there's something to be said about the power of embarrassment in college football. Alabama got embarrassed last year, losing on the road to Vanderbilt, losing the way they did to Oklahoma in a game that Alabama was expected to win and march closer to the SEC championship as a result. Nobody saw Alabama losing that game up in Norman. And they got blown out by an Oklahoma team that was anemic on offense and could barely get anything going themselves, but Alabama practically handed them that game. That's embarrassing. For a team that's won as many national championships as it has this century, for a program that has the standard that Alabama has, those losses are embarrassing. And going 9-3 last year and missing the playoffs with the roster that Alabama had, I get the circumstances, but still for that program, that's embarrassing. And you've heard multiple players that have stayed on this team for this year say that the way last season went, it lives with them each and every single day. That's what's motivating them. That's what's pushing them through in these practices, in these workouts. And you've seen so many teams in the past in college football who have gotten mortified return and become absolute titans. It awakens something inside of you as a team. And it enables teams to dig in deep and find their identity, because you're not going to get embarrassed like that again. Look at Ohio State last year. Who knows how they would perform in the playoff if they didn't lose at home to Michigan? That was mortifying. They were double-digit favorites in that game, and they should have blown the doors off of Michigan on paper. But they couldn't get anything going on offense, and they got beat by their arch rival at home, and that's something that stuck with them for those few weeks until they played Tennessee and Oregon in the playoff, and we saw how that unfolded. Embarrassment is powerful in college football. Alabama was mortified last year, and it's sticking with them. And that's going to motivate them through every practice, every workout this summer. And I think you see a different Alabama team take the field this year just because of the sting that they felt from last year. The talent is there, the motivation is there, the circumstances are there. And I think they're all going to pair together, and everything is going to come together perfectly for Alabama to be a legitimate national championship contender this year. Let me know what y'all think of this take in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day.